Would you like The Secret to Eternal Youth?
This seriously? Scans, color, declassified archives, documents about the Philosopher's Stone and the elixir of life, what our Secret Service was doing on Stalin's orders.
The realm of magic and the supernatural ceases where the realm of chemistry and physics commences.
I just have one question. At least ever in my life, any shooting in which I participate will go according to the script. Tonight we have an absolutely magical, unique guest who I've wanted you to meet for a very long time, who I've been looking forward to meeting. I've been waiting for him to come back from his next expedition. I was hoping that he would bring something with him. That would amaze me, to me and to you, and that we would not only bring up the hot button issues that are close to mythical, but also we're going to be able to somehow to substantiate those themes as best we can. Oh, I have a very important request for him. Kindly, please consider it. Let's discuss things. We possess several facts and evidence demonstrating its importance. Today I would very much like to introduce you to him.
Nikolai Subbotin, journalist, director, scriptwriter, traveler, president of the Protohistory Association, author of more than 100 documentaries, organizer of dozens of historical and ethnographic expeditions in Russia, Egypt, Germany, Turkey, Bulgaria, France, and other countries. He took part in several government projects analyzing the archives of Anenerbe, Argus, Androgen, Orion, Merkulov's folder, and many others. Would you like The Secret to Eternal Youth?
Seriously?
Absolutely. You and I have already talked before the beginning of our conversation that today we will touch on a topic related to a very interesting laboratory, which was located in Kraskovo near Moscow. At the beginning of the 30s, on the instructions of Joseph Vissarionovich himself, there were created two, extremely unusual for, let's say, the communist Soviet system programs, because they, to put it mildly, went beyond the boundaries of scientific materialism. Specifically, the task was given to decipher an alchemical treatise and see if there was any meaning there and what the Philosopher's Stone was.
Everybody took these alchemical...
You know, it's an interesting story. Everything is described in these documents, how it was ordered, where it was brought from. Moreover, for those specialists who worked under the auspices of the IGPO, under the auspices of IGPO, that is, they were people who, in principle, under the auspices of IGPO, sat on the spot and did science. They sat in place, I mean, because they were supervised. It's even written here what kind of business trips they had. They traveled abroad, an interesting name in the report, on foreign business trips. They traveled in order to study the available alchemical literature, which is in libraries up to the Vatican. Reports how they met with experts from the occult society Anenerbe in the 39th year. Here they met, exchanged experiences even. Of course,
so everyone was looking for the elixir
I'm telling you
of
why,
life too, of course.
When we started talking a few broadcasts ago, we talked about the fact that everybody talks about Germans, occult. There are all kinds of things and so on. Our, let's say, party organs were no less interested in all occult topics, but our secrecy regime was a little bit higher. And that's why all these stories connected with occultism, with expeditions, with all kinds of mystical artifacts, they are just starting to come out. Ours are better at keeping secrets in the world than the Germans, as it turned out.
Even when we created conditionally, even with Avin, when he started to head this department, it was still perceived a little bit through the prism of criticism.
Of criticism?
Criticism?
You know, that's an easy question to answer by looking in the comments on any paranormal story.
Yeah, that's right.
95% of people, without even thinking about it, go on to say, that's nonsense, that's bullshit, that's the very thing. All these things, they are probably not perceived by a person a little bit, because he does not have the sum of necessary knowledge.
Do you think that this is the most important guardian who protects all the great knowledge from those who have not grown up to it?
Are you talking about disbelief?
What?
Isn't it?
Not disbelief, but this so-called critical thinking.
Yes, we can agree here, but again, critical thinking, it plays a very not very good function, because behind this critical thinking, you can spill out a child's guts, remember? No. Well, that's the old saying, that is, when nannies wash the child so well that they can spill the child out, that is, lose the sum of necessary knowledge. So when we come to the edge of science and paranoia, there should still be a healthy mystical skepticism.
Which I agree.
And there's not enough skepticism for that, because, in fact, what you're saying is skepticism. It's all of our 95% of subscribers who say, this is bullshit, it's not skepticism. You have to have, first of all, a sum of knowledge here, and it's not skepticism that emerges in the sum of knowledge, it's the understanding that emerges that allows you to gently go through all these pitfalls.
Yes, and you see somewhere already where you learn to pick it out, absolutely.
Absolutely right, yeah. As they say, magic and the occult ends where the knowledge of chemistry and physics begins.
That's right, absolutely right. And that's exactly what we're promoting.
Well, now we started with the Philosopher's Stone. I see you're getting so close. I will show you now, of course, the formula of this Philosopher's Stone, but I will disappoint you, because when I started to read it, I realized that you have to be a herbalist, a chemist, an alchemist, so that's what this folder is about. Again, I'm telling you. In the 30s? Sure.
Let's write. Is it written in Russian? Will I be able to
Sure,
read
you'll
it?
even be able to show it to the audience. It's not hype to create your Philosopher's Stone. Joseph Vissarionovich created 2 departments, one scientific one, which was engaged in studying the possibilities of life extension. There were a number of scientific specialists there. One of them is funny, we can't remember his last name now. With this one. God, a mantis, I think so. A godly scientist who preached the theory that if the blood of a young person is transfused to an elderly person, then with the transfusion of blood from the young to the elderly will begin to recover and shed decades of years. Do you believe that? There's some scientific evidence to back it up. The only trouble is that there are certain difficulties with, well, first of all, at that time they didn't know about rhesus factors yet. Secondly, a lot of people died.
Yes.
Secondly, this theory has not confirmed itself from the word now at all. So there was some, I don't know, I'm not an expert.
Look, I even had an immediate explanation. I don't know how true it is. I mean, you have to go conditionally and check it out, but I can speculate.
Don't check it out.
Look, it turns out we take magic. It is clear that magic is quantum physics. The most powerful rituals are made with blood. The strongest. It's believed to be the source of life. Next, a drop of blood is supposed to represent everything. Of the human biosuit.
That's right.
All of his energy bodies, everything. I mean, in fact, a scan of his electromagnetic field imprinted in matter, in a piece. And that's it. So what we're doing is we're taking and we're injecting this one man's life source into another person.
We're merging 2 matrices, let's say.
Yes. And so in this way, the younger electromagnetic field starts to pull energetically and mentally the person first. And if his psyche is ready, he will start to reorganize. So there will be some changes at first that are not strong. And if the psyche is ready, then both spirit and matter will unite. And he will start faster than the young one.
Perhaps because what you have told us, there was approximately very similar effect, but without all, let's say, understandings of metaphysics. That is, elderly people really had a rise and recovery for a short period of time, and then everything went back to normal.
Of course, because the consciousness absolutely blocks all this. 100%. Conditionally, you can say it in different ways about Goryaev's methods. Yeah, I super love anything that's got a lot of time and effort invested in it. I mean, people saw the meaning in it, the benefit. And I really admire people who spend their lives researching something. Why is it that some people can have setbacks? I mean, they've been treated, and then everything goes back to normal. The disease started for a reason. First of all, metaphysical, psychological, and then later on.
Well, it's the same thing here. We end up treating the effects, not the cure. without getting to the
There.
source. Petro
Does it work
Petrovich
here?
knew very well. We also discussed and worked with him a lot. And what did he actually do? He took, roughly speaking, a conditionally healthy matrix, as you understand how healthy it is. How do you identify these? Well, it's like metaphysics,
Yes.
mental viruses. How do you find all those engrams
So
that
you
need
know
to
what
be
I came up
eliminated
with?
initially?
I came up with this idea that we should take Goryaev stuff or some similar stuff and combine it with head work, and then
Sure. That's why we discussed a lot of things with him. We improved the methodology a little bit, and we created protocrystals in our laboratory. But that's a separate topic.
what is this?
I'll even bring it over and show you.
You created a protocol with him?
I created protocrystals using these technologies, or rather these very sound matrices, laser matrices, and what we found when we explored labyrinths in the Kola Peninsula, creating georesonators first. That's a whole separate topic.
Okay. Yes.
It's about wellness and pumping and frequencies. I don't really like wild topics because I've done a lot of things. When I was young, I did a lot of things. I gave lectures. We did experiments with people, not with people, but in a team.
I
We
realized.
came up with some very interesting methods. Then one situation happened. I just closed it, though, in my own time.
At the age of 16, I became the very first excursionist of the international category in Russia in '91.
Yes, I still have those diplomas lying around somewhere.
You still have it.
Well, a little bit more now. But it's a separate topic, you know. You have the status of a journalist. You're all serious. You talk about some things. You say, guys, I can tell you what's going on in your head.
I just
Fix
have
it a
one
little bit.
question. Does any movie set that I'm on ever in my life ever go off script, where we talk about one pre-planned topic? I'm so interested in everything, and we bounce around with you.
Ian, that's the best part, you know. In a script, we're still moving in an acquired topic.
Right.
And the most delicious thing is live communication, when we pull out these meanings somewhere, so I have it like this. And here it is interesting for the viewer because we are with you.
What's that?
We do monorenis on issues. So. Expert, straight talk, live communication is much tastier. It inspires trust. So, coming back again, there's no way we'll get to the elixir of
No
life.
way. You see, there's a guardian standing there.
And the second vector turned out to be unexpected. And on your assignment, and you know, the most interesting thing is that this idea was brought to Stalin's mind by Maxim Gorky. No more, no less. So the most interesting thing, but it's a separate story. I'll send you all this, show it to you, take a look, and
Do
I'll
you have
show it to our
scans?
viewers. Of course there are. It's just that I have a laser cutter.
Can you
Of
share
course I have
them?
them all. I'll share them, of course, it's fine. The scans are in color. We'll show you everything. We'll tell you everything.
Scans,
Yes.
color. Declassified from declassified archives documents
What's more,
about the Philosopher's Stone and the elixir of life. What our secret services were doing on Stalin's orders. I just want to put a big red, a huge red bold line. I mean to emphasize it repeatedly. Just think about what it is. Every time I talk about it, my hands shake and my stomach churns because you and I have the opportunity to touch to a mystery and to something that can't be touched at all. A simple, ordinary person who doesn't devote his life to it. If it were not for Nicholas, we would not have this opportunity, and he can share it with us. And as always, let's make a simple agreement. You're not just subscribers here. You're here as part of our team. You are here, the people who help us fulfill our mission. And if you're here and you like it, you can not just watch it, but you can actually be a part of our big team and help it grow. And accordingly, one of the contributions you can make, you can absolutely openly go pick up this document at the link. We'll have it attached for you. And I didn't see, by the way, that it was attached under any clips. Maybe I just didn't see it, but well, we'll attach it for you. You can have it. But let's make it a totally fair exchange. Then you owe us a like, a comment, in order to get this video seen by as many people as possible. And that will be your side swap. I think we have a deal.
and in general, again, dear friends, you can ask some questions, expand the topic, because what Jana and I are discussing now is, well, not even the top of Ambergay, It's such a small pyramid, actually.
We've just started.
You can ask topics, we'll talk about it. It will also be a fair contract.
Yes. And in general, we have discussions, even arguments. You can participate in our discussion, and we'll argue with you there too.
So, what did Comrade Stalin do? Followed the path of both materialism and mysticism. That is, the scientific laboratory in the Moscow region was studying from the point of view of science, and the laboratory in Kraskovo was studying from the point of view of mysticism. That's why in the 33rd year an order was issued. A special department was realized at the SPU, which is directly in Kraskovo.
Kraskovo, by the way, is an interesting neighborhood. There were a lot of special dachas in its time. Now Kraskovo is such a settled neighborhood, but before it was such a periphery where there were dachas of the regime AGPU, and this is one of the dachas.
Or number 14 or something, we'll show you. We have footage from the Quadra when it was still possible to fly and shoot where it was approximately located. NKVD specialists and fellow scientists went there. One of them was a scientist. I'll find his last name now, and he was a very interesting person. This person is interesting because thanks to this person and the acquaintance of this person with Comrade Maxim Gorky, Stalin was given the information that in principle there are possibilities, and let us study whether it is possible to prolong the life of leaders and those people who need the party, the people for a bright future. They named this comrade. Just a second. I'll find his surname.
Subbotin.
Subbotin is a very interesting comrade, a former Frank Mason, also possessing certain knowledge. What's most surprising, a Freemason was put in charge of this laboratory from the beginning. Then Comrade Saveliev was already in charge there.
This laboratory was originally named Androgen. Androgen is a mythical bipedal creature. You know what it is. Then there is an interesting document. After a year of research, Comrade Saveliev, already a professor, asked the management, let's change Androgen to Argus, because it looks like Argus, and Argus is such a mystical dragon which keeps a type of Cerberus knowledge certain. This is the underworld where
they keep...
Why did they decide to change it?
Oh, I don't know. They have these really funny letters. I guess, you have to understand the spirit of the era. We live now with smartphones and nuclear reactors and stuff. We don't all understand how people lived in the 30s, especially during the time of the Soviet system. Most likely, Comrade Saveliev, judging by the letters, was a very enthusiastic scientist who was entrusted by the leadership to deal with such things. He began to look for some fundamental events in the terms themselves, meanings that would make it possible to deal with this process more effectively. There's a funny letter here. Saveliev was to prepare a report for the next plenum on how their laboratory had done for 2 years. He writes a note saying that I'm very glad that the state entrusted me with such an important task. You realize there's still a lot of research to be done. We can talk about it only in 2 years. They sent him a report from above, like Comrade Saveliev, in 2 days. Yet he makes a report in 2 days, and such an interesting note at the bottom that this letter was not passed on to the leadership, because for such letters, most likely, he would not have been patted on the head. We can't stall for time. There are bits and pieces of some of these. The treatises that were deciphered, although really it's just a small sampling. These, Daddy, it's actually like this. Because if we show you everything, and we'll show you a little bit, the funny thing is that they used most of the Menley Hall diaries. Maybe you've heard that. This is a very interesting young man who in the early 20th century wrote a Talmud like this. A metaphysical analysis of all the movements, from Rosenkreuz to all the Illuminati and so on. And the guy was only 25 years old. He'd been for 5 years in archives from the Vatican to here, and after him he left such a tally of diaries. And among other things, Saveliev's lab used Menley Hall's diaries, because most of his diaries, when he took notes in different libraries, are alchemical treatises. And in the end, what do you and I have? You and I have, you can even read it out yourself.
We have determined that primary matter must be chosen. And we believe that this is the unmistakable definition of grey cauldron, or peridium of Cyrimian iron in the form of 100 kilograms of the mineral, in the form in which it exists in nature. in the whole state in which it is extracted in the mines, 100 kilograms, to perform the first act of the great work. And the great work is atmasan.
Nay, so this knowledge has always been possessed by various secret societies. The Illuminati, the Freemasons, all the alchemists were members of certain spoons.
Conventionally based on that, that's why all the powerful lifelong lives and tra-la-la-la, right? Yes.
And they're always members of some secret.
Yeah, but they do die, you know, like the queen.
Ice spoons. Well, they still live a little longer than the average period.
But then it's not the Philosopher's Stone.
And the Philosopher's Stone is actually a very interesting substance, which can be considered from the point of view of a philosophical vessel of knowledge, and from the point of view of really some substance. Because when we will talk to you in our next programs about the Lumpkin expedition, the Philosopher's Stone is actually mentioned there too, only in a slightly different state. So it's very difficult to understand what the Philosopher's Stone is. From my point of view, it's still, that's what we're talking about. It is a state of human consciousness when a person can determine where the truth is and where lies are. What is the meaning of life? And by doing that,
To reprogram himself through his consciousness.
because until we learn to think correctly, we will not be able to manage our biofoundation. Now we have reached the final stage. And just before that, the documents
Show what they ordered, how much they ordered. They ordered gold and everything.
It's even funny. They conducted many processes in cow dung.
That's what I'm like.
Why? Because it allows a certain temperature.
Once we reduce the matter back into the horse manure for fermentation for 30 days. Tra-ta-ta, tra-ta-ta-ta. Third thing to do, boiling. The first stage of boiling, the mercury stage. We boil the mixture for 50 days. On the 50th day, the so-called Rhombus should be formed, blackness. The second stage of boiling, the Saturn stage. Everything looks as if it is all glistening and agitating without smoke. Everything melts and glistens. The procedure takes another 40 days. Do not change the temperature regime. The matter should decompose about 3 weeks after the Saturn phase. The walls of the vessel should be covered with white fibers, or hairs resembling gray-haired whiteness. But this phase begins the process of complex transmutation of matter into a perfect catalyst. The presence of white fibers on my back, on the walls.
This is
of the
where it's
crucible.
very important. They use the catalyst. What's a catalyst? A catalyst is, shall we say, a certain process.
The presence of white fibers on the walls of the crucible indicates that the experiments are being done correctly, and there was nothing we did wrong. The fourth phase of boiling, the moon stage, then the Venus stage. Wow. On the third day, we should see a bright shine. Matter should turn into sun nuclei and take on a deep red color like the blood of a healthy person. That's the end of the phase.
And we're back to Ruth again.
It's always in these documents.
Or it's not the process itself that causes a great deal of consternation. How did the alchemists themselves know all this and get to this point?
Oh, I don't think they learned it themselves, by the way. You try to find that out.
And it's such a long and complicated process. Every step of the way, you get the wrong amount of dew, and that's it. And if you do the math, it's like 180 days.
Yes. Yes.
And you're throwing away 6 months.
I think that even borscht, if you don't know a particular recipe, if you try it in a restaurant, you won't repeat the borscht. And if we're talking about something this complicated, it's absolutely impossible, I think, for a human being. Just like inventing astrology. How could a man invent astrology? There are such complex processes there that it's impossible. It's something more.
It's some kind of super knowledge from some other civilization. So it's as if we're living on the wreckage. Absolutely, some kind of technological knowledge that we inherited from some of those ancestors of ours.
You know, before I would have thought maybe that too. And that was it. And now that my theory, let's call it a theory, there are levels of consciousness. There are 12 of them. Well, as I'm being shown now. I realized then what I was being shown. At the 9th level, I realized that someone is showing me something and leading me. Up to that level, I am such a matter. No, just me. What higher powers? There's nothing. And at the 9th level of consciousness, I realized that there is someone after all. And maybe there's not even someone. It's the higher self. And the higher self is what? It's the absolute. And then, when I found these declassified CIA documents, I think you know what the absolute is. Then it's already becoming clear. And in the 21st year, when I had my program put together, I thought I had invented it. And I had such a crown that, wow. Because when you really understand that you have in your hands some artifact, some huge knowledge that no one else has, and you just apply it like that, and you get money and other spheres of life, it really seems to you that you have found a magic stone or a magic wand. And you're the only one who has it. And that's where that kind of turns on. Yeah.
Ego.
Yeah, that's where that kind of I am the ruler of the world comes into play. Because I could actually see it working like that. And I thought it was my idea. Now, of course, that's gone. I mean, I've had my ass kicked. And that's gone now. I realized that it's either the soul somehow remembers, yes. Judging by its past lives and past incarnations, and past lives are also scientifically proven, we won't tell you how. Or the higher self brings down directly from the source some knowledge, you know, from a general field of some kind, and conditionally. Even about the blood, you said, yes, and I immediately, oops, I'm not a physicist, I'm not a chemist, I can't do it. And conditionally yesterday, I'm sitting here thinking, I wonder if a person learned some knowledge. I mean, I got a picture and I saw that if you got some knowledge and you don't apply it, it would be very painful later on. Well, and I took that from magic to physics, and I was able to explain what changes in you and why then the event fields in your life are going to unfold in such a way that you start to apply this knowledge that you've been given. I can really see the picture. And at one point, I'm getting an explanation of what the higher self is. And I see a picture from Interstellar, and I understand how it is. And so how do you explain these things? And it turns out I'm just a human being. I'm not a physicist. I don't study it. That's how scientists are. I'm just finishing the crumbs for them. Let's say that they write there's some research. But that program, when I look at it, I realize that this could not have been invented by man, that this is something like this. It certainly could never have been created by a human being.
We're tapping into some kind of just
Global knowledge banks. Roughly speaking, you find the right page on the internet, you go to cyberlending, and there you have all the secrets of the world that you can use. Cyberlending. Cyberlending is a very useful resource that, by the way, I recommend that all subscribers always use. In no way an advertisement, because the project is not commercial. Cyberlending. Cyberlending is a site that collects various scientific reports, dissertations. It is an exclusively scientific resource where you can get scientific information. For example, do you want to know what a dolmen is? What do scientists say about it? Dial, go to Cyberlending and write dolmen. And here's a list of articles that write about it.
I didn't even know about it.
You didn't know about cyberlending?
There's Wikipedia, there's Cyberlending. It's a scientific resource. It's purely scientific. Please, what is the higher self? There must be a job. Let's go to Cyberlending. The higher self. Someone must be looking into this.
No, thank you. We were rambling on in the interview with Nicholas, and I completely forgot to tell you that if you're interested in the brain programming, influencing the brain, influencing your psyche, in order to achieve absolutely anything, and at the expense of such tools, which are actually studied by the intelligence services of a huge number of countries in our world, then I'll see you at the training. The link is in the description.
The most annoying thing is that this is where the documents end. I mean, it's unclear.
Yeah, what about it?
What they did. I mean, clearly, according to the documents, they got, well, it's not quite over. There's a sequel, but we'll talk about that in about 5 years.
You can't tell us about it because it's classified.
Experiments were conducted, experiments were unsuccessful. In general, the tests ended, shall we say, tragically. That's why the head of the lab got the big atata.
And a Tata in 35, you know how it ends.
And it's still classified.
The trouble is that each alchemist invented his own symbolic system of these records. This is what was the biggest difficulty in deciphering. You and I were talking about the Anenerbe expedition a few shows back. Well, not just Anenerbe, but the Third Reich's expedition to Antarctica. I'll find it. Here you see what's interesting about these documents is that when you own the totality of these materials, they are unexpected.
It was from the Kabbalah.
In a way,
You're the one, I guess, yes.
Yes.
I see what you were looking at.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. Guys have been digging up everything they can and putting it together. It's, that's the point. We're all talking about the Anenerbe our guys were digging. 33 years old. Anenerbe hadn't even been created yet.
What an interesting life they had, of course. I wish I could go somewhere with them. Guys, take me with you.
Here, by the way, are the transcripts of the alchemical symbols, how and what to read.
The operators are sitting there, not even looking. I don't know. And nothing is more interesting to me than this.
These are, again, symbols of our consciousness, after all. I don't remember what the plaque is about. I think it's about minerals, isn't it? If my memory serves me correctly.
Yes, and horse manure.
Among other things.
Minerals and horse manure. Oh, wow. Doesn't anyone have one of these? Can you please write it down in the comments? I, for one, don't consciously draw these symbols. Not these symbols, but similar ones. Sometimes I sit and draw them unconsciously. And then now I opened it.
Automatic
I see very
writing.
similar ones. One point, I had even on my iPad, I have a record that it's like I'm writing in some kind of language.
It makes sense to pull up the record and look, by the way.
I couldn't find it. I even uploaded to a search engine, didn't find anything similar. But they're like that kind of thing. The channeling told me they were Elvish. I thought maybe some other civilization.
This is a very significant document, by the way. Directly, which shows that the laboratory was directly under Stalin's control. Here, take a good look at this, top and bottom.
The Bolshevik Communist Party, Central Committee, Stalin's signature.
Do you know why it's not a complete document? Because after receiving certain results, the laboratory from Kraskovo was transferred to Mamontovka, also in the Moscow region. And there are documents there. They still have to stay with us for a little while.
I need at least a month for a serious report. With a trip coming up, 6 months, we're talking about research. We've just entered the unknown. I've lost sleep. I dream of tablets, alchemical equations, formulas. I wake up.
But, well, here's a scientist, a pragmatist, who touched a miracle, and the miracle began to work.
It feels familiar, doesn't it?
Memories of touching a miracle like this. There you go, confirmation. It's hard to think of something like that without experiencing it.
At night. With thoughts that help me in my work. My coworkers have similar behaviors. This is fascinating research. You can't talk about it for at least half an hour. What half hour? Incredible discoveries will be made when our group returns from Europe. We must get to the truth and begin practical experiments. Stalin, after reading this, agreed to set up this laboratory.
That's actually quite true. This is exactly the note that he wrote to the curator from the AGPU that he needed a month. After that, he was told, atatata. The next day he was already reporting to Stalin. What he reported to Stalin is unknown. He was told, atatata, what a month. And Vissarionovich is calling you for an audience. What months?
Well, what are the conditions of his receiving it? What are the conditions for participating with us in the same mission? I don't want you to be mere spectators. I want you to be like us, missionaries, passionate people, and realize that we are truly a team. Each video will unite us more and more, making us more and more like-minded. The more common knowledge we have, the more we understand each other, speak the same language. It is just incredible that in this world there is an opportunity for people from all over the world to unite with one idea and be passionate about it. So you'll be a part of our team if you help us to promote these videos, not just by watching them, but by thanking us and contributing. We are fortunate to have access to this document with you. We'll post it when we get 10,000 likes because it's an absolutely magical, unique document that I don't want to give away. If we're going to give it away, we need it to really get publicity so that we actually make this video for a reason, because that document that was declassified from the archives, that has a step-by-step recipe on how to make the Philosopher's Stone, the elixir of life, and to give it away for nothing would probably be sacrilegious. So that's what we're going to do. We look forward to your likes, comments, become part of our team. Do you know something? Maybe you've heard about transmutation that's going on right now, and maybe a study of someone who has had some success in transmutation. That is alchemical work in creating that very Philosopher's Stone. Or let's put it this way, transmutation, because one of the properties of the Philosopher's Stone is supposedly to create gold.
Well, yes, it is a catalyst that starts a process.
Yes.
As physicists would now say, the process of cold fusion, which Zabolotov was a physicist doing.
Being in places not so remote, he managed, as it's called, in a sharashka to realize cold thermonuclear fusion. In fact, that's what it says here.
So he was able to create gold.
It's not exactly gold. It went from one atomic state to another. I don't want to, as they say, whistle for the camera. You and I will find a specific description of this scientific experiment, and we will read it out, or give a link, so that our viewers can read about the miracle that this scientist performed.
I just can't do it right now. I just want to speculate with you. Yes, it's not in the format of a documentary, but just speculate. I have an acquaintance, I'm meeting him tonight, by the way. He told me that his close friend, a comrade living in America, has studied transmutation, and there is a technology by which clearly how to transmute from one state to another, and you get gold plating on a copper wire. And he's so fascinated by the idea, yeah, I mean, when he created it, he got a knock.
Well, that makes sense.
Have you heard of it? I mean, it's clear that these are his stories, yes, you and I don't know. We can't verify or deny it. Maybe you've heard something, that someone is doing it now?
You know, I haven't heard now. I gave you the swamp example. I mean, in a home laboratory, you say that someone you know in America is doing it. I think with the advancement,
Technology and capabilities, they're doing it. You just realize that these experiments, first of all, they're always under the control by the government, by certain agencies. We usually find out about them about a decade later. Usually. So I have no doubt that such experiments, well, by the way, again, you and I can go to cyber leasing and probably even find the ends, because as if it's not a secret from the information, there are so-called post-trails. Scientific reports you can listen to, like, for example, scientists have discovered some kind of nanomaterial. Nanomaterial is already a vector towards transportation, materials, metals, etc., etc. Now we are talking about quantum experiments, transitions. It's not only about computers, it's not only about ultra-long distance communication. It is also about this, among other things. That's why experiments are being conducted. Again, in order to create certain nanomaterials, you have to be able to confuse them, actually, for sure. Now, we will discuss this separately with you next time when we open our magic suitcase.
The one thing that makes me very sad at the end of all this is that we're so far away from some really secret things that are being explored and that we can't get to, and I wish we could. It's just sad that there's something even more magical, there's something even more interesting for us as these inquisitive minds, and I just want to just be with it. Oh, and you don't have to share it with anybody, just to have access to it, because then you fall even more in love with the world. You realize how absolutely magical and unique it is, and how it works.
There are so many mysteries around us. Unfortunately, we won't recognize them all, we won't revisit them, and we won't revisit them.
But it's always something to strive for.
So next episode, we're going to be looking for something new, and you've got a lot more of stories in that suitcase.
Yeah, we've got a Bigfoot hair in there, but we'll talk about that later.
And a piece of UFO debris.
Not only that,
Yes?
and in these chalky boxes, artifacts that are 4,000 or 5,000 years old. But we'll be sure to open the boxes next time.
I'm about to open the road. You gotta be kidding me. Thank you for being with us. Open our previous issue if you haven't seen it yet, and be sure to leave a comment below to debate with us. Yeah, I mean, really write your opinion, because we have raised a lot of topics and we are watched by very intellectual people, and I think that we will have something to discuss with you, and I think that what we know you will be able to add to your knowledge. Because I, for example, love to read the comments under our newscasts, because a bunch of smart people come there, yes, and tell us some facts really besides speculations. So be sure to write there, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next issue, and so that we do one common mission, that is to spread what we are spreading.